now I'm headed to another Whataburger on the other side of town in Benbrook, and listening to Numbers, Radiohead song. P.T. Anderson was the director behind it. I don't think I would use it in my movie, though. I think it has this kind of studio quality that is for something else, you know. But it's still a pretty good song by Radiohead. But don't tell Sun Kill Moon that. And there he is, Harmon Dobson, the dream. Probably just go like that. It's fine. That should work. It's fine. She put it in the cup holder, and then she said, well, if I put it in the cup holder, it might be cock heavy. Never heard of cock heavy. And I was like, cock heavy? Oh, yeah, right. I understand cock heavy. Now, I'm grateful for a lot of things. I'm mostly grateful for my beautiful children and my current beautiful wife. And I'm grateful that I don't smoke. I'm grateful that I no longer drink. And I'm grateful that it's going to work out. And I am going to finish this major motion picture, this screenplay too. I'm grateful that I get to work on it. I'm about to write a scene here pretty soon. So a lot of things I'm grateful for, but most of all, I'm grateful for God and Jesus Christ. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. I don't hear a whole lot on YouTube that people say that they're actually brave enough to say that, because it could hurt their careers. But I'm grateful for that, and I stand by that. I have no problems sleeping at night knowing that that's the case. But a lot of people probably choose not to, bring that up in the picture for whatever reason. But I choose to bring it up in the picture, and I think it's the right choice to bring that up and to know that he loves me. The one and only Messiah. Beware of the dogs. Now, the Bible does say beware of the dogs. They're talking about two things in the Bible. The dogmatic ones, the ones that are living in law rather than living in Christ. It's one thing that they're talking about. And I think maybe he might have been talking about dogs too. This is the Whata catch. Pretty good. Now for Chipotle. Dropping it off at your doors. Pretty cool Yamaha. Here we are. The most powerful institution in the entire world. USPS, United States Postal Service. No one is more powerful than our organization in the entire world. Remember that. They are the #1 power of it all. Always thank him every time I see him. Thanks a lot. My grandfather did that. He's Apache, half Apache. He worked for the most powerful organization in the world, United States Postal Service. He'd pray over every envelope. He was Jehovah's Witness, but they're pretty religious. They're you know, but he'd pray over every envelope. Appreciate you. And one of our greatest writers, well, funny writers, Charles Bukowski, worked for the service for many, many years. Until he could barely move his hands. He worked in the office though. He did a little bit of foot patrol. He talked about it in the post office. If you read Charles Bukowski's Post Office, he talks about the foot patrol of dropping off mail. But also very important workers too. And they have to do things in a certain amount of time. He was always timing himself at night before he'd start writing. He'd write between around 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. every night, or he'd feel guilty if he didn't. He'd feel bad about it if he didn't. He had a certain schedule. He stuck to that schedule, and he also worked. He was one of the writers that worked most of his life. Came up with some of the best creative stories, some of the best short stories, great books. Ham on Rye, Post Office. Ham on Rye, Hollywood. He wrote a book called Hollywood, and Barfly was a movie they made, a screenplay based on some of his stuff. A guy named Mickey Rourke played him the first time. Did a really good job, great job. Then later on, one of my favorite actors, Matt Dillon, one of our last surviving method actors that worked with Strasberg, he played him in Factotum, another book that Bukowski wrote. Don't let anyone ever tell you, Bukowski wasn't always polite. He wasn't always polite. And he did speak truth, but he you know, he used language. So, and he had a horrible alcohol problem, mostly with beer. But all writers show respect. Got her towel on. All writers show respect to Bukowski, regardless of, you know, what genre they work in. They'll show their respect to Bukowski. It was very funny. It was funnier than most stand-up comedians by far. Listen to some of his stuff on YouTube. It's very, 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 very funny. Yeah, there it is right here. All right. I got to write a page. Drop this off. I'm going to drop it off first. Well, I think in this scene, I'm going to have Jonah and Mom show up at the Parkman house. I'll kind of describe where it's at in the script, I guess. And we'll go from there. Turning on Dorothy. Crossing 5th. Nice form. See, it kind of reminds me of England or something. They got a golf course right here. Look at these houses right here. Not bad living. Nice little cozy home. Probably bigger than a lot of movie stars' homes. What kind of internet service they got? People moving in and moving out. The ups and downs of all things. I like that scene raised in Arizona. Said H.I. Jr. He pooped his pants. John Goodman responds, "It's natural. You don't get funnier. Get on that red brick." We're past the Trinity River. There it is. The Trinity River on February 28, 2023. February 28th, 2023, story of writers. Bukowski stayed with the post office most of his life, and then he wrote at night between 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. in a certain aspect of his life, wrote many novels, mostly just worked and wrote. He would have readings, though. He would read. He was very funny. It was more like going to stand-up comedy. He did this in San Francisco, California, different parts of California, where he'd do these readings. He worked for a paper. He had his own column called Dirty Old Man. One paper, they just dropped the whole paper, and he was in the LA Free Press or something like that. Sam Shepard, who was a playwright, some people considered him like Shakespeare, he did do a little work. He worked when he was in New York. He was a security guard. He also wrote for a small-time music magazine reviewing bands on the rise. A lot of music was really big the time of the 60s. They were a little bit similar. Both had a drinking problem. Both traveled a little bit, but Sam Shepard traveled a lot, going between California to New York. He even went to London one time and wrote a play called Action. Sam Shepard had he was a fan. He was a fan of Chuck Yeager. He liked real things. He didn't like Hollywood. He didn't like L.A. He didn't even like saying the word L.A. He was more of a fan of New York, and he was more in the theater. You know, Joe Chaikin discovered Sam Shepard in the 60s. Joe Chaikin had a theater called the Open Theater, And the Open Theater, they did all kinds of stuff, a little very similar, inspired by the Living Theater, which was a hippie theater. And Sam Shepard was pretty much kind of discovered by Joe Chaikin. And Joe Chaikin said, well, I'll take your work and I'll put it up on stage. And did that for several of his shows. And he got in a place called La Mama, which is still there today. I've even had friends present their plays at La Mama. La Mama is still there. It's called La Mama. It's in New York. I've been by there. It shows Joe Chaikin on the wall in a Bertolt Brecht piece. It's very interesting, these writers. And, you know, Sam Shepard kind of wanted to be a movie star. He was a movie star. He was a movie star as well. He wrote The Right Stuff in several movies. The most recent one before he passed away from ALS was he did a thing about Butch Cassidy. It was a fictional piece about Butch Cassidy. He did that right before, right before he died. Bukowski didn't really do a lot of movie star stuff, but he did make appearances. And Bukowski kind of talked in a slow, weird voice, like a dirty old man kind of thing. And he'd get up on the mic and just a lot of profanity. Mostly sitting down. He'd have his Heineken, some kind of drink like that. And he'd tell them, I'll beat all of you to death. I'll take any of you on. And they'd all laugh at him. Here's a heavy set, big beard. Some comic strip writers had put him in some of their stories. The guy that wrote American Splendor, Harvey Pekar, he included Bukowski stuff. It was in there. R. Crumb too. R. Crumb was a cartoonist at the time that had absurdity in his work, and included this kind of dirty old man kind of aspect. To be honest, personally, I was in R. Crumb 3 at Hip Pocket Theater. I played the character Funt, and my role was to go on stage. He's kind of this right-wing, almost militant type of guy. And he goes to Mr. Natural, who's Mr. Natural's got this little long beard. Look at this thing right here. It's a cement mixer. And Mr. Natural, he kind of talks like this. A guy named Lane played him. And tells Funt, he says, the secret to life is foot. He's, what? So he goes around saying foot. Foot, 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 foot. Over and over and over again until he gets upset with Mr. Natural and tries to beat him up. Calls him a fake. That's what R. Crumb laid down for the players. But, where is R. Crumb? He ran off to Paris. Kind of a weird guy. Hung out with Harvey Pekar. R. Crumb kind of talked a little like this, real skinny. These big old glasses. Anyway, y'all know who he is. Hey, Johnny Simons, the owner, well, not the owner, I always get that mixed up, not the creator of Hip Pocket. One of the founders of Hip Pocket, one that created it. He kind of is like a Mr. Natural with the long hair and a long beard. He doesn't always have that, but he did meet R. Crumb. R. Crumb took him in his home one time when he went to California. Said, you can look through all my comic strips, whichever one you want, you can have. And so Johnny went through his collection and took a few of the Zap comics and created three seasons, or not 3 seasons, but 3 plays that were in 3 different seasons of R. Crumb. I was in the 3rd one. Don't ask me why, how it happened. I don't know. I played Funt. But Funt's character was kind of the antithesis of Mr. Natural. And he wore like this little watch and was kind of a right-winger. We did something with my eyebrows. Made my eyebrows look kind of short and stubby, like Funt. It was probably one of is fun is the word. It was very fun. It was a lot of fun. Probably the most exciting, fun kind of comedy show I've ever done. Mostly it was a musical too. It was kind of crazy. Lots of dance.